So I do videos where I give my thoughts on wrestling and I criticize and I also praise. And I want to talk a little bit about one of the things that I think a lot of people are not talking about. And this is something I've talked a little bit about, but I want to kind of devote this whole video to it. And that is the fact that, yes, WWE is still doing great business. They're still doing great. They're still doing great, even though some of the talk now is that the Toronto Elimination Chamber show did not move the tickets they were hoping it would move. But maybe that's why The Rock did that segment with Cody to kind of, to announce he's going to be there and to raise the ticket sales. That could be a guess. People are going to go see The Rock. But I want to talk about Triple H's creative and how it's not really what it used to be. So, when Vince McMahon stepped down, or in some ways was forced out, and Triple H took over in 2022, the product already felt very fresh. He brought back a lot of guys that fans loved and some that fans liked, but didn't see for a while, like Dexter Lumis. He brought back Johnny Gargano, whom I love from NXT. He brought back Bray Wyatt. Like, he did the first year and a half of Triple H's run as the creative boss, I think went very, very well. And, the 2022 was sort of the beginning, and then really I think things got very, very well done in 2023. In 2023, the main sort of story I want to, really harp on is how good the bloodline was. Now, the bloodline began with Vince McMahon, and Triple H inherited it, but the things that Triple H did with it enhanced it. Like, for example, the building up on Sami Zayn, that was all going on. The Usos and Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, Cody chasing Roman. Then, of course, in the summertime, Jay's turn and how that sort of bobbed and weaved. So 2023, I think, was very well booked by Triple H. And going into WrestleMania 40, it was also relatively well booked. Now, obviously, The Rock and what happened when he stepped in and changed the main event, and they changed it back, and they changed it to something else. And, we've talked about that a bunch. That seems to be out of Triple H's hands. Granted, I'm sure he was in those meetings. It's become very clear, and if it hasn't become clear in the past week to you, you must have your eyes closed and are covering your ears. But it's become pretty clear that The Rock really does have a lot of power. That final boss gimmick is not just a gimmick. The guy is on the board of directors, has a ton of power for a superstar, whether he be semi-active or part-time or not, and he can veto Triple H and make decisions that Triple H has no control over. Granted, I'm sure Triple H has his 2 cents. I mean, I'm sure it's not just The Rock steamrolls him, but The Rock has final say, especially with his stuff. So, the build-up to WrestleMania 40 was great. Cody's title win was great. And then 2024, I think, was not as well booked as 2023. And, of course, everyone has their own opinion. To me, I think it was still... 2024 was still better than anything Vince McMahon had done in God knows how long. So if you ask me, would you rather have Vince back? The answer is no. Would you rather have Tony Khan? The answer is no. I think Triple H is still the best booker right now, at least in the overall major wrestling world. I'm not going to go into the indies, but he, when it comes to the big companies, he is. But there was a notable drop-off. I thought that some of Cody's reign was haphazardly booked. I thought that there were times where I felt like he didn't really have things properly planned out, which an example of that is the Randy Orton Gunther stuff, which I thought they did a good job calling back to the King of the Ring match, but you could tell that it didn't really make much sense. It was almost like he was building up challengers late. Same thing with Kevin Owens and Cody, who had not earned that title shot, but they had that segment on Smackdown because they were friends. So they They tried to make it work, and I'm not saying they didn't make it work. They did, but you could tell that, his booking was kind of flailing a bit. Let's not forget the Wyatt Six. The Wyatt Six show up, huge fanfare, crazy, 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 build up and pops, and just people were going nuts over them. And now they're not even on television anymore. You got Nikki Cross there. You got some real talents. Joe Gacy. Dexter Lumis and Bo Dallas might not be the best in-ring tacticians, but you've got talent there that are just not doing anything. And I know they're in the Alexa Bliss angle, but still, we haven't seen much of them. They kind of flopped. You've got a bit of a mess with the tag team scene. How now you've split the belts again, which I think actually made the belts mean less. I don't like the fact that he's adding more championships. I've talked about how wrestling has too many championships. New Japan has too many titles, AEW has too many titles, and WWE has too many titles. In some ways, if I really want to analyze 2024, I would say that the real booker of the year was probably Shawn Michaels. He took NXT, which for all intents and purposes is the developmental brand. The guys and girls on NXT are not quite on the main roster just yet, but they're almost there. And he made it into a product that grew in numbers significantly, grew an audience, got a lot of people over even before being on Raw or SmackDown, and fans love NXT. I mean, you rarely see people talking trash about NXT when it airs. That NXT show has been very solidly booked. Now, I'm not saying that he's a horrible booker, but he has made some mistakes and he has done some things. And I'm talking about Triple H now, not Shawn Michaels. He has done some things that I think could be considered weak booking. I would still prefer him over Vince. Now, I've said this before, but going into WrestleMania season this year, I am nowhere near as excited as I was last year and the year before. I think WrestleMania 39 and 40 had tremendous builds. We had a lot of great character work from Cody Rhodes, Roman Reigns. We had a ton of fun stuff from the other people involved. I think the one thing about 2024 that you cannot deny was masterfully booked was the Drew McIntyre CM Punk feud. I don't care what the Dirt Sheet Observer Awards or any of these website awards say. CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre was objectively the best feud of 2024. And most of it was done just with them talking. And in some ways, Drew using social media to enhance the feud, not bury it. So that's one thing you can give Triple H credit for, but how much of that was Triple H's creative and how much of that was input from Punk and Drew? I think Punk and Drew had a lot to do with it. The Judgment Day I thought was really well booked in 2023. Their breakup in 2024 was okay. It wasn't the worst thing. Rhea Ripley, on one hand, though, really gets even. She got even more. She was already super over going into WrestleMania last year. Now she's even more over. That Liv Morgan feud and the thing with Dominic Mysterio, that's another thing that Triple H can say that he had a great job in. But this build up to WrestleMania this year, I'm not all that excited, to be honest with you. I'm sure Gunther and Jey Uso will be a good match. They haven't done enough to really get me into it. Charlotte and Tiffany Stratton is the other big match they announced. And that's sort of still, the real major buildup is still to come. We've got about 2 months to go before WrestleMania, so they've got plenty of time. And I'm typically the guy who just says, let them cook and let's see what they can do. But like I said before, I'm not interested in John Cena versus Cody Rhodes, but I did do a video where I discuss how they can save that match, and there is a way to save that match. And I'm not really too invested in, Roman Reigns versus Seth Rollins again. I mean, they could do it. They could have some good promo work between them, but they better be like a serious stipulation. You know, there's been talk of Seth Rollins retiring and Becky Lynch maybe to go raise their family, which I respect. Maybe it is going to be a loser leaves town. Then at least the match has some stakes. You know, we haven't had a loser leaves town match at WrestleMania since what? The Ric Flair retirement match with Shawn Michaels? And he didn't even stay retired. So, yeah, I really hope that the booking improves. The reality is, y'all, that when it comes to booking pro wrestling, it is a hard job. And to do it for any number of years, you're going to get burnout. You're going to use your ideas up. I don't know what Triple H's process is. I know he surrounds himself with smart people like Michael P.S. Hayes, like Bruce Pritchard, like Paul Heyman, like Gabe Sapolsky. And all those guys come from semi-different backgrounds and can provide a different insight to the angles and the stories. But it is hard. Hopefully he improves, and hopefully we can get... I'm not saying it totally sucks, because there is fun stuff. I still watch the shows. But it's definitely not what it was in 2023 and most of 2024. At least, well, some of 2024. 2024 is where we were starting to see the cracks. So, yeah. Those are my thoughts, man. Do you agree? Am I looking too deeply into it? I'm going to let them cook, and we'll see what happens. Take care.